Welcome back to the Diplomatic Lounge. As you would expect, we have some comments and reflections on recent events in Syria. And a few points that have a personal fascination for me. First of all, we see that once again it's a group of irregular fighters that is taking over a country and a government. And a question that has always intrigued me is who pays them? Where do they get their money? Where do they get their uniforms? Who is giving them arms? Where do they get their vehicles? Till we really know who is lurking behind in the depth of such groups, we see how difficult it will be to make deals with them, to trust them, to take their word. We have to penetrate in the deep recesses of a jungle of interests and intrigues. And classical diplomacy is not very good at that. We see it these days with the difficulties that even skillful diplomats encounter in trying to bring an end to fighting in Gaza and Lebanon. The second point is Mr. Assad is now supposedly in Moscow, where he has been given political asylum. My one-time friend and colleague, no longer my friend, Sergei Lavrov, may say publicly that Russia does not forget old friends. But in the long run, the situation is a little more complicated than that. The easy part is to welcome somebody that has been useful to you once. But in this case, Mr. Assad has clearly outlived his usefulness for Russia. Mr. Putin has a certain track record on how to deal with people that he finds no longer useful. It may also be that some fanatic Islamist finds him, locates him in his hideout in Moscow. So, difficult questions to ponder for the longer run. One thing is certain, though, Mr. Assad will be safe from the International Criminal Court in Moscow, because it is Russia's, at least Mr. Putin's and Mr. Lavrov's own long-term interest, to keep the ICC away from Moscow. But I have some other reflections specifically about Syria. Before the civil war, it was quite an open and welcoming society, not plagued by religious sectarism as so many countries in the region have been. This is partly thanks to the Assads, who kept a lid on sectarism. And let's not forget, Syria is a country which has some of the oldest Christian communities in the world that were there centuries before Islam even existed. Assad, the Assad family, before the civil war, were able to keep the society pretty open and peaceful. No doubt there was a lot of repression involved, but the outcome was certainly an open and welcoming society, as many travelers who went to Syria before the civil war have told me. That is certainly lost. We have to reflect what this means for the region again. All the regimes or governments that were trying to build secular societies, that is in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya to some extent, have gradually disappeared. And we are left with much more religious-inspired strife and division. Now, all dogmatic religions at some point in their history have resorted to violence. Christians have done it on a large scale between Protestants and Catholics. As recently as the Balkan Wars in the 1990s, there was bloodshed not just between Christians and Muslims, but between Catholic Croats and Orthodox Serbs. It's sort of, unfortunately, part of the DNA of dogmatic religion. How this will play out in the long run in Syria, we don't know. But when I see the fighters, the warriors of a new regime enter the capital of a country with a very hard religious slogan of intolerance, I do reserve my opinion. Much to reflect on once more, and hope to see you next time in the Diplomatic Lounge. Thank you.